This is White Plains Week, the weekly roundup of White Plains, Westchester, and world news. With John Bailey, editor and publisher of the daily internet newspaper White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, WPCNR.com. Jim Benerofe, editor and publisher of SuburbanStreet.com and WhitePlains.com. And me, Peter Katz, formerly with NBC, ABC News, and stations from Boston to Los Angeles. White Plains Week, what's happening? Who are the newsmakers? What's in store for the future? The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76, Verizon Fios Channel 45, and on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. Now, White Plains Week.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. White Plains, Westchester, and the world. John Bailey with you, White Plains Week, in a brimful of news show. And we welcome back tonight Jim Benerofe, the roving correspondent.
Where have you been roving, Jim?
Yes.
All over the world.
Yes, right. How are things in the Orient? Do they still love us over there?
Yes, they do. Very much so.
Yes.
Particularly in Vietnam. They really like Americans coming there.
Yeah.
They do.
Well, that's a switch, right? Yeah. Exactly. Very good. But anyway, perhaps we'll be able to talk more about your great roving assignment a little later in the show. But right now, let's go to the White Plains Week video newsreel.
Let's do the headlines first.
Right. You know what? I've forgotten. It's been so long that he's been on assignment. The headlines.
And here are the headlines for the week of November the 9th, 2018. Democrats roll to victories locally. Only one Republican wins. Governor Cuomo, Thomas DiNapoli, elected controller. Letitia James, elected New York State Attorney General. Sustainable Westchester announces lower than last year green energy rates to Common Council, guaranteed for 2 years. Watch for their letter with city seal coming to join the program or opt out. As we are recording, County Executive George Latimer announces 2% tax hike in the 2019 budget. Details to come. Ramp meters in effect at entrance ramps 4, 1, and 9 westbound on Cross Westchester Expressway. We will have video showing you what to expect. Bicycle violation fines go from $10 to $100. Some architectural improvements begin on White Plains Metro North Railroad Station. Trinity Financing expected to close on financing for demolishing empty building at Winbrook in White Plains in January. Work expected to begin on second building. Cost $61 million. Town of Greenburgh plans new campus for its schools, suggests $163 million bond referendum. City approves pilot for Hamilton luxury apartments conversion. Labor heads point out hospitals charge differently for the same procedures. Neighbors protest contamination on Good Counsel site during Citizens to be Heard portion of City Council meeting. President takes away press credentials from CNN correspondent. Veterans Day ceremony at City Hall Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Youth of the Year named.
Thank you, Jim. And now, the video newsreel March of Time. And the first thing we want to mention is the Veterans Day observance on Sunday morning at 10:30. This is a picture of last year's in 2017. And City Hall will hold a special remembrance of the 11th day at the 11th hour of the 11th month when the armistice for World War I was signed. the war to end
War
all
to end
wars.
all wars,
Right.
but it didn't quite do that, did
No,
it?
just, and the wars are still going on. And of course, it was election week in the USA. And let's go to the local winners, and there were no surprises here. Kristen Gillibrand, Senator to Washington, elected for the second term. Andrew Cuomo, third term as governor. Nita Lowey, 17th Congressional District as fixture at 81.
And unopposed.
Right.
Andrea Stewart Cousins has now, it looks as if she's about to become a very powerful individual up in Albany. She was held back from becoming the Senate Majority Leader, has been the Senate Minority Leader, and now that the Democrats have seized the state Senate, it looks as if she will be elevated and become a very, very powerful person. She happens to be my representative in the section of White Plains that I'm in. She covers Yonkers, some of White Plains, some other areas.
And Shelley Mayer is my representative in the state Senate. She, again, unopposed. And David Buchwald was opposed.
He was opposed,
but he wiped him out.
But you wouldn't know it.
That's right. And Mr. Buchwald, I believe now, his third term in the Assembly. And so we congratulate them. And generally it was a wave. Only one Republican won in Westchester, and that was Kevin Byrne down in the 94th Assembly District. And
well, you know, nationwide, it wasn't quite the big blue Democratic wave that they anticipated. Here in New York State, it certainly was, because for the first time in a long time, the Democrats, you know, can say we are in total control.
right, and that will be tested to see what happens with Governor Cuomo as the new legislative session comes in.
Nationally, of course, we know that the Democrats have taken control of the House of Representatives. Just how many seats they have picked up is still not known as we're recording this show, because the votes still are being tallied and results are still being decided. Right now it appears as if
tallied or thrown out, depending on how you
they picked up at least 30 seats, we know that, and it could be as high as 38 seats when all is said and done.
What I think is amazing is the fact that the Senate was so different from the House.
Yes, but that part of that goes to the fact that many of the Senate seats that were up in solid red states, solid Republican states. But even there, you know, where Republicans should have won, you know, in a walk and a runaway, they were very, very close results in many instances. And even on the Senate side, they still are counting this, and there are some that are toss-ups at this point.
We don't really know
we
the
really
actual
don't
breakdown
know.
of the Senate
Correct.
yet.
We don't know just whether the Republicans will end up having picked up seats, whether they will just be held in check. It's really
At this
too soon
point,
to
they
tell.
seem to have a bigger majority in the Senate.
But if you look below the national level, if you look at the state level, Democrats made enormous gains. They picked up governorships. They flipped state legislatures to be Democratic, and much of what happened in areas which we thought would be solid red, solid Republican states.
It is good not to feel too confident, though. They have to refine their message going forward to be more specific
They do.
and more sensitive. Everybody likes to feel good that they at least took over the House, but it remains to be seen how loyal those Democrats that won are.
True. What sort of deals, you know, will be made politically?
How will they
in
be
the
bought
future?
off?
You know, one thing that happens in politics is that if you're elected, what you want to do is right after an election, raise taxes if you're going to raise taxes. You try to do it as early as possible, and you try to do it as far away from the next election as possible.
Peter?
Well, as we're recording this program,
Yes.
Westchester County Executive George Latimer is holding a news conference to unveil the new budget.
Yes.
And
Right opposite this program.
Sources indicate that he will be announcing a 2% tax increase on the county tax. That's within the state cap of 2% increases. And he also will be disclosing a $70 million budget deficit.
But I have to take issue with that. That is what they said before they counted all of the extra sales tax they got this year. And that has already wiped out about 37 million of that. But it also remains to be seen. I mean, I think 2% would not cover a 70 million deficit. This is extra money.
We will have full details on next week's program, so stay tuned for the entire week.
Yes, exactly. They'll be dribbled out, but usually we get an advance on the budget, so we don't get any sort of misinformation. But they didn't do that this year.
Something else is traditional after an election, especially midterm election, and that's for the president to hold a news conference. Now,
yes, this was
this was the news conference to end all news conferences. Not only did it go at least an hour and a half, I think it was an hour 40 actually, which is long, but it was rambling. And actually was more like a circus than a news conference, complete with shouting matches and clownish bumbling and incomprehensible statements, which could easily have made more sense had they been the roars of lions or barking of seals in a circus. At one point, rather than giving direct answers to direct questions, President Trump started fighting with Jim Acosta of CNN and Peter Alexander of NBC, and a White House staffer, in an unprecedented move, tried to yank the microphone out of Jim Acosta's hand. Now, about a minute 25 into the video you're about to see, you'll see her head at the bottom of the screen.
In the midterms.
Here we go.
If you don't mind, Mr. President, that this caravan was an invasion. As you know, Mr. President,
I consider it to be an invasion.
As you know, Mr. President, the caravan was not an invasion. It's a group of migrants moving up from Central America towards the border with the U.S.
Thank you for telling me that. I appreciate it.
Why did you characterize it as such?
Because I consider it an invasion. You and I have a difference of opinion.
But do you think that you demonized immigrants
in
this election
to try to keep them? I want them to come into the country, but they have to come in legally. You know, they have to come in, Jim, through a process. I want it to be a process, and I want people to come in, and we need the people.
Your campaign.
Wait. You know why we need the people, don't you? Because we have hundreds of companies moving in. We need the people.
But your campaign had an ad showing migrants climbing over walls and so on.
Well, that's true. But they weren't actors.
They're not going to be doing that.
They weren't actors. Well, no, it's truth. Do you think they were actors? They weren't actors. They didn't come from Hollywood. Right. These were people. This was an actual, it happened a few days ago. And
they're hundreds of miles away, though. They're hundreds and hundreds of miles away. That's not an invasion.
Honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN.
All right.
And if you did it well, your ratings would be much better.
If I may ask one other question, Mr. President, if I may ask one other question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President, I was going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr. President,
that's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other question, if I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that you may have?
I'm not concerned about anything with the Russian investigation because it's a hoax. That's enough. Put down the mic.
Mr. President, are you worried about indictments coming down in this investigation?
Mr. President.
I'll tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN. Go ahead.
I think that's unfair.
You're a very rude person. The way you treat Sarah Huckabee is horrible. And the way you treat other people are horrible. You shouldn't treat people that way. Go ahead. Go ahead, Peter. Go ahead.
In Jim's defense, I've traveled with him and watched him. He's a diligent reporter who busts his butt.
Well, I'm not
like
a big
the rest
fan
of
of yours either, so
I understand.
To be honest.
So let me ask you a question, if I can. You repeatedly
you aren't the best.
Mr. President, you repeatedly over the course of
just sit down, please. Well, when you report fake news, when you report fake news, which CNN does a lot, you are the enemy of the people. Go ahead.
Mr. President, over the course of the last several days of the campaign, sir, at the end of the campaign, you repeatedly said that Americans need to fear Democrats. You said Democrats would unleash a wave of violent crime that endangers families everywhere. Why are you
Because
pitting
they're very weak on
Americans?
crime.
Why are
Excuse
you
me.
pitting Americans
Peter.
against one another, sir?
Peter, what are you trying to be him?
To
Yeah,
be
go
clear,
ahead.
to be clear, though, the question,
Thank you
sir,
very
is
much.
why
Sit-
are you?
sit down,
But the
Peter.
question, but you didn't answer my question. Just very simply, the question is, why are you pitting Americans against one another, sir?
I'm not.
Is that how you view
No, I'm not.
citizens
well,
of
look,
this country?
I'll tell you what. We won a lot of elections last night. We did very well last night.
But in
and
many ways
I
it
think it's
divided
going
the
to have.
country.
I think it's going to have a very positive impact. I watched NBC this morning. They didn't report it exactly correctly, but that's that's the fact with NBC. Nothing I can do about that. Go
You
ahead.
said you would sign an executive order on birthright citizenship. Are you still going to sign the executive order on birthright citizenship
You'll
this
ask
week?
me that question a little bit later. Go ahead.
Jaw-dropping.
No, but we didn't see that. Thank you for showing that exchange in its entirety.
Now, the White House revoked the press pass of Jim Acosta, and after what you saw. Now, White House News Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders played a doctored video from what you just saw, a doctored version of it, which had been done by the radical right-wing propaganda site InfoWars, which was designed to make it appear as if Acosta actually hit the White House staffer who was trying to grab the microphone from him. He did not hit her, and he said, "Excuse me, ma'am," to her. The "excuse me, ma'am" was edited out of the video. The video had been sped up and zoomed in to make it look as if Acosta's arm was actually hitting the White House staffer, who was trying to grab the mic. And that's not what happened at all. The White House had no answer when asked why Sanders lied about what happened and tried to pass off the doctored video as legitimate. This is a outright challenge to what makes this country great, and that is the free press. And when you destroy the free press, as they are trying to do, you destroy our right to free speech. Everyone's
and
right
information.
to free speech.
Good information.
So there's a lot more on the Trump story, but we have a lot of local news, so if there's time, we'll get back and do the rest of Trump later.
Okay, so the good news happened at the Common Council this week when Jasmine Graham spoke about a new rate that everybody will be happy to hear about. Here she is.
Moving forward, we actually secured really great rates. If you're a standard account, whether or not you're commercial or residential, you're now going to be paying 7.709 cents. Here in White Plains, we went green. We're really, really happy about that. And so that 8 cents for residential is now down to 7.959 cents per kilowatt hour. And on the commercial side, what was previously 9.97 cents per kilowatt hour will now be the same as that residential rate. So commercial accounts will also be paying 7.959. So effectively, commercial accounts are seeing a 2-cent decrease per kilowatt hour in their pricing, which is really incredible. So the first time around, even with that 8 cents, 7.7, and all the rates I just told you about, we have performed really favorably in terms of savings. In Continental Territory, there's been $14.1 million in savings across all of the municipalities. And then including 4 communities in NYSEG territory, New York State Electric and Gas, which is in the northern part of the county. We've netted $15.7 million in savings. Here in White Plains, you all have accounted for almost $2 million of that savings, $1.958 million. And that breaks down to about $238 over the life of the program, about 28 months for a standard account, $110 or standard residential account, $110 for standard commercial. And those are a little bit skewed because there's less accounts, so the savings overall seem a little bit higher. But on the green residential side, residents have also saved $141 on average, and green commercial accounts about $35. So as I said, moving forward, those commercial prices are actually going to plummet, 2 cents of savings per kilowatt hour. So we expect that the green commercial rates will see more savings moving forward.
And moving along with a story that we told you about 2 weeks ago was ramp meters. Well, very quietly, they went into effect. And
I saw that. I was driving on 287 yesterday.
Right.
I saw it.
And here's what it looks like.
And let me tell you something. It backed up the traffic on the ramp. Traffic was moving very smoothly on 287, almost as you have it here in the video, and the cars on the ramp were each having to come to a stop. You see the way the light goes red after each car? Well, when you see the red light, you have to stop, and then you have to start accelerating all over again. So this is
And here,
somewhat ridiculous in my opinion.
yes, now it's red, and then it's going to go green, and then that car has to immediately go. And I
If
stop.
that car went through the red light,
Well, no, he had the green, and now I have the green, so I go, and you still have to look. But this was done at around 12 noon yesterday. And
Where?
Here it is, ramp 1, the entrance westbound at Terrytown. Let's see how this works again. This is live stuff. And what is I find interesting, though, is that last night when I was at when I drove past the exit 4 entrance, it was off. It wasn't on during the actual rush hour. So what is the point? These were supposedly going to fix things up at rush hours, right?
Have they had?
Let's hear it is. Here it is. This is entering 287 westbound to the Tappan Zee Bridge. There you go. Caution light there. Then you have to stop at this red light. The car now has green, and then you have to stop again. So it's stop and go, and then I have to go. There we go.
this is absolutely preposterous.
They have
That's what
any
you expect.
place where these things have been used where they have a proven track record, or? Seems
I
preposterous to me,
had
too.
seen them in Los Angeles decades ago, and they messed things up sufficiently in Los Angeles to bring them to New York to mess things up here.
Right. Now,
Whose idea was this, anyways?
I
go
don't
ahead.
know. I really don't know where this originated.
Well,
It just
this was
happened
an
all of a sudden.
idea.
You know, when you have a huge amount of traffic,
Yeah.
how do they work? I mean, when
Yeah,
traffic is crawling.
When traffic is crawling, the idea is that we're not going to
Can't
push
give you a
more
green
more
light.
cars
Yeah,
onto
yeah,
onto the road with the traffic that's crawling. We'll make them sit on the ramp.
In rush hour last night, it was not on the entry by 4, so I don't understand why it wasn't on. Now, our bicycle violation fees were raised by the Common Council Monday to $100 a violation. Could we have a picture of a bike, please? There we are. So, unfortunately now, supposedly, if you go the wrong way or run through a red light, you will be fined $100. The question is, who's going to enforce it? I suggest you familiarize yourself with the violations which are on my website. And think about it, but who's going to enforce them? Who is going to flag them down? We're going to have police cars chasing bicyclists?
Maybe we need bicycle
Yeah,
cameras.
what they'll do is if the bike doesn't stop, the police car just runs them down.
Yeah, that's a thought.
Right. Now, some architectural improvements are beginning to be noticed at the White Plains Metro North Railroad Station. And this is what they look like. Upper left, that's under the overpass on 119. There's a sign telling you White Plains. There is
As if you don't know you're in White Plains.
right, and then up in the station they have painted the concrete on the southern part of into New York ramp, and also put in an oak ceiling. That is really aesthetic, not exactly Grand Central, but it is
Worth every bit of the $93 million.
$93 million. What are we getting for $93 million? My God. But at any rate, that's what's happening there. And Trinity Financing expected to close on financing for demolishing the empty building at Winbrook, which is shown in this view from the continuum. You see that little brick building underneath the big blue arrow? That's where Winbrook is. But this project, 12 years in the making. They've done one building, and they still haven't gotten going on building 2. This is an insult to the residents who were told, we'll give you new apartments, just wait. Well, they've waited more than a decade. Now, Town of Greenburgh plans a new campus for its schools, suggests a $163 million bond referendum. This looks like White Plains is just really usurious, you know? Not usurious, frugal in their bonding.
Oh, by not bonding for new schools?
Yeah, and all that. But that'll be interesting to see whether the district... Now, the city approved a pilot for the Hamilton luxury apartments when they agreed.
Payment in lieu of taxes, P-I-L-O-T, pilot.
Now, let's take a look what that is. It covers 18 years, $31 million in tax payments to the city of White Plains.
The graphic says 19 years, so is it actually 18?
That's why I said 18. Okay,
So the graphic
you can't
is
get
wrong.
good staff today.
Pay no attention to the sign on
Well,
your
it's almost
television set.
19. It's almost 19.
Almost.
It's 18. Right. Fake news there.
You could check its license and see how
but the
old
point
it is.
would be that's if we could have that slide back a second. My point is that's only $173,000 a year average.
Okay.
I mean, that's intriguing to me. What do you think? Do you think that's an appropriate pilot for this place? Because it goes out 18.
Well,
it enhances their property immensely.
I forget what somebody said, but they said that all these projects are going to be asking for pilots because otherwise they just can't build them. They can't. The costs get out of hand.
Yes. The cost. We do need welfare for these multi-million-dollar national developers, don't we? I mean, they need it. It's so tough getting financing today. I mean, I'm sorry. It's welfare. That's what it is.
The fact of the matter is, John, if White Plains doesn't give it to them, they'll go to some place that will.
This is always the excuse. Now, we had Lenore Friedlander and Tom Carey of the Westchester Putnam Labor Council on People to Be Heard this week, and they pointed out that they were going to go after hospitals because of the disparity in what they charge for procedures, because the SEIU 32BJ union is self-insures the members. They know what the hospitals charge, and they've noticed this disparity, and they're going to make a real issue, because I always thought the costs were the same.
Well, look, it's hospital costs, all healthcare costs, drug costs. It's all a big issue, and one way that you resolve that is by negotiating your costs.
Right, and now we also want to salute the Youth of the Year, who was recognized at the Common Council in White Plains, Luis Melendez, who said to the audience at the Common Council that he got involved with participating in the community and helping others in the community, volunteering at hospitals because of his involvement in the Youth Bureau program.
And I guess that's Melendez on the left. Who's that guy on the right?
Yes, and you should watch what the mayor says about this young man. It's very impressive. And but right now, that's about it on White Plains Week for this week. John Bailey, for Jim Benerofe and Peter Katz. Good night.
Good night.
This has been White Plains Week, news and commentary about White Plains, Westchester, and the world. The views and opinions expressed on this program were solely those of the participants. White Plains Week, produced by White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, and presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76 and Verizon Fios Channel 45. You may view White Plains Week anytime on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. For White Plains Week, this is Peter Katz speaking.